Have you ever heard the phrase, practice makes perfect?
Yes, I have heard that. I've also heard that, how you get to Carnegie Hall.
Practice, practice, practice.
There it is.
That is obviously something that people have been saying for a long time because it has some truth to it.
I agree.
Not that I think that there is really such a thing as necessarily perfection.
Mm-hmm.
I never see that in my work.
Right.
It may exist for other people.
Well,
but
yeah. Yeah, and really, I don't even think perfection is a good word.
Right. So, except for when you look in the mirror. But practicing is often something people find boring, laborious.
Yeah.
And I certainly have felt that way many times. And yet, I can't deny that putting in the work very often leads to much better results.
Interesting. Yes, I'm wondering where this conversation is going to go.
Oh, I don't know. Maybe we should have practiced this conversation, and then you would know.
We don't do that.
No, we don't do that. So this is part 2 of our conversation about creativity, which sounds like so much fun, but it really is a lot of work when you're trying to get something the way you want it. And we previously talked about inspiration, which is related to creativity, but that's more like the spark, and creativity is more like, actually trying to get it done.
Yeah.
Trying to actually make it into being.
Yes.
So I wanted to offer some things that people might resonate with about what it is to actually work on something and see that process grow or not grow, which is also frustrating.
Great. Well, then you'll do that. I will then be inspired.
And you're going to have a drink.
I will be inspired
to
to then respond with my version of creativity.
Well, I think it's helpful because I know a lot of people out there. We meet so many creative people.
Yes.
When we go to these conventions, and whether they're trying to make something that's in our, as I was saying last time, artsy-fartsy, or building a business, that's a creative endeavor as well.
Yes.
And there's lots to it. And yeah, you really have to keep applying yourself to get your best results. So.
Well, then you know what we should do.
We should get to it.
Welcome to the Heart of the Cards, a conversation about creativity, inspiration, and dealing with what we're dealt.
Hey, this is Dan Green.
And Eric Stuart.
And this is episode 32, part 2 of Creativity.
Tasty.
So now that reminds me of the whole cooking thing that we have as well as an undercurrent to our conversations.
True.
Yeah.
And I tend to use that as a metaphor anyway to creativity. I
do you?
Always say, I will always say, I like to be like the one that sort of bakes the cake, I like adding the ingredients when I'm talking about, music or even voiceover work.
Gotcha.
As a producer, I think of myself as a chef.
Right. Well, I know there's some performances that I've spoiled.
Oh.
So that also has.
Yeah. Use this voiceover by this date. We amuse ourselves.
I should probably put that on some of the stuff I put out there.
I like that. I'd like send an audition in and say, please review.
Right, not
please,
good after.
Yes, please,
right,
not
right.
good.
Or,
not
or
good.
refrigerate, right?
Yeah.
Or freeze.
Yeah. Do not refrigerate and use by this date, or good before this date.
There are certainly things I've listened back to that's made me sick. So, there you go.
Yeah.
But I wanted to offer something in line with that practice makes perfect, the work of being creative.
Okay.
And I got a couple things that are not the same thing, but they're related in that way. And sure, we think of somebody diligently doing the scales if they're learning how to play piano or another kind of musical instrument. And you got to understand how to use the instrument, get the muscles developed, in your hands, and so that all feels very natural. Sure. And I was going to offer something about how a certain skill that I wanted to improve the skill of writing dramatic material. I was actually improving my skill in doing that without realizing it by doing some other work that was tangentially related to that. So I developed a muscle without realizing it, which was really quite a boon, a benefit.
Yeah.
So I'll just dive into that.
Yes, please.
Okay, so for many, many years, I have taught voiceover technique largely for the aim of developing a demo for somebody, whether it's a narration demo or a commercial demo or a character animation demo.
Mm-hmm.
And I did that for many years with Ed Studio. And I've taken a break from that recently, but really enjoy the process of teaching. I really do enjoy teaching and helping people get better at what they want to be better at. And when it comes to the narration stuff and the commercial stuff, there's tons of copy readily available. Edge has a fantastic library of both of those kinds of materials. And anybody interested in pursuing voiceover, I don't work for Edge anymore, but I recommend check them out. They really know what they're doing. And there's a lot of other people out there that are shysters, so beware. Yes. But Edge is not that. They're really reputable. So when it came to the character animation demos, which I got a lot of those people because I had more of a background in that than some of the other coaches, as we were called. We didn't have tracksuits and whistles, but we did help people. And so when developing the character animation demos, there weren't ready-made scripts. A character animation demo is a very particular thing. Even if you've done episodes of Pokemon or Yu-Gi-Oh! Or whatever, it would be hard for you to extract something out of an episode that would really show you off on a demo.
Sure, and also that would make a lot of sense.
Right, because it's out of context.
Yeah, I do have a couple of chunks that I've been able to use as Kaiba and Brock and James and stuff like that. But it was not easy to find because...
that's what I'm talking about.
You're like,
how hard that is.
What are you talking about? And also okay, you're doing a funny voice, but I can't tell if this is supposed to be sad, funny, or whatever because there's no context.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I knew that resorting to scripts that were already out there wasn't going to help me get this job done. In a demo, you have, certain demos are different. Character demos, you can go a little bit longer, but you want to be as concise as possible because people have no attention span.
What?
And people also have no attention span.
Yeah.
We both made that joke. So predictable. So anyway, actually, as a non sequitur, we got some comments about some of that more adult humor in one of the previous episodes.
Oh yeah,
I think people enjoyed that. Okay. Maybe we should allow ourselves.
I blame
to
you.
loosen up a little bit. Hey, that is accurate. I was responsible for that. So anyway, I learned that I had to generate these scripts with the people I was working with. So I'd get a student. I'd give them some of the basics of how to use your voice, how to change your voice, but always reinforcing that acting is the most important part of voice acting, as any teacher should tell you. Nobody cares how you sound if you can't work your way through a scene or a line, right? But we would get like 6 or more characters for their demo, and I would help them generate the script that would be on as the final copy for the demo over the course of that training. And we would play with ideas and tweak with ideas, and and that also helped them to understand what their strengths were or how their strengths developed. Mm-hmm. So it was very organic in terms of the process. No two demos sounded alike. I wasn't templating one thing and saying, hey, I would describe to people as we were working together, if we wanted to record a demo, I could just give you a script and say these lines like this and use this kind of voice, imitate what I'm doing.
Right.
And we would get the demo done in a 1 or 2 sessions. But you would have learned nothing, right? Mm-hmm. Except to copy somebody who's spoon-feeding it to you.
Yeah.
So it was a much more organic process, and them understanding why certain lines work and that sort of a thing. Well, what I learned without intending to learn was how to create dialogue, and really just coming from one person mostly, that set the scene, gave you the context, and created an arc, 3 acting beats from one point to another with a transition in between. Because that's what shows you off as an actor. Being able to create one moment, another moment, and another moment.
True.
That's a sequence,
True.
right?
Yep.
And doing that, it's kind of like a game. And at first, we would have the more expansive version of the idea of the scene. A gunslinger comes in and, upsets the poker game, right? So establishing all of those elements, what kind of character this is, what situation are they in, what's the tone, because you don't want to do the same character in the same kind of show, right? And I was saying we would have the more expanded version of that. And once we understood what we wanted from the character and the emotional beats we wanted from those moments, we would whittle it down and whittle it down and whittle it down to where essentially every character had about 10 to 15 seconds.
Okay.
Which sounds like no time at all. But I was learning for myself, and I was surprised or amazed maybe, that you can get so much across in just a little bit of dialogue.
That's true.
And that is a writing skill that helped me a lot when doing the script for Crossing the Gods. It helped me also with writing that short story that we're going to produce as an audio piece.
Right.
And it also gave me an appreciation for the better version of commercial writing, right?
Yeah.
Or other kinds of writing. It also made me intolerant of people who were just overwriting and really too expansive. And it's okay, we've established this already. Let's pick it up. Let's move along. So that's just one example of improving a skill unintentionally by repeatedly having to apply this skill. How much story can I tell with as few syllables as possible? And I was really taken by the power of how much you can imply stuff without explaining it. And the audience can fill in those blanks, right?
So the quality over quantity approach in writing.
Well, to a large extent, for sure. And I mean, there's a number of moments in the opening moments of Crossing the Gods when our characters first have dialogue with each other. We're referring to an implied history.
Yes.
Throughout that whole thing.
And I love that.
And well, I think it really helps the audience to just like, okay, they get geared up to it, right? And it really brings the story forward, right? And keeps it moving forward. And also just being judicious about what words are you using is, I think, a great discipline for any writer. Even if you like to have a lot more words than you actually need, there's some writing styles that are fine like that. I tend to lean more for the make each syllable count.
Yes. But I love the
approach.
fact that you're talking about not having to go back and explain the whole story in order to or, right?
Well, yeah.
Well, I mean, for instance, if I said to you, "Hey, Dan, so lunch at the same place we go to on Sundays," and you're like, "Yeah, same time, gotcha." If we say like that as dialogue, not only are we friends, we have a regular thing. We do, whatever it is. I mean, you don't have to go, "So Dan, my friend, are we going to the restaurant on 5th and Main, the one that we," I mean, like, you don't have to, you can condense it. And from a short conversation between two people, you already know that there's a backstory or what their dynamic is without actually knowing everything about them, right?
Right.
And that exercise is not, that's great exercise in writing because you didn't have to go back into the whole lead-in. The listener will discover that, and also discovers a lot from that exchange.
Exactly. They can infer so much.
Yeah, and that's a great art. I think that is a great art in writing.
Yeah. And I also had a similar sort of thing happen with drawing stuff. I hadn't been drawing as consistently as I have been in these last several years. these, whatever, 4 years or so. So since I've been drawing more consistently, I've just, I've gotten better at certain things. And so much so that I have to go back and redo some things, but for certain projects. But, that's just more reinforcement for that old adage that the more you practice at something, the more capable you will get at it. And that counts for a lot,
When you say better, though, you mean more
skilled.
And that you are happier with the...
Exactly, getting what you want out of it.
Right, because you...
And other things being open to you because now you're capable of them.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't even imagine... obviously with audio and with music and stuff like that, the technology is so incredible. But I can't imagine like being an artist, like starting as a graphic artist today. There's so much available, and it's amazing to me. I could probably spend all day at the Apple Store doodling on an iPad with the different brushes of different like and the textures. It's just so amazing. And then that's not to say that now things are quote unquote easier, but my goodness, like the idea of, you know what, I like this, but I'm feeling like it needs to be done in a chalkboard thing. Click. Now I've changed it. No, that's not working for me. Let me change it. Like that to me is it's fascinating how many options, and all of those are valid. I mean, you've shown me art where you've done different versions of it, and they're both great. But it's like, but what do you think is the best vibe for this?
The particular thing.
The shading here, or the shading here, or the pattern here, and it's like, my goodness, if you'd only shown me one, I would have said that was great. How do you even decide?
And linking to our previous episode, I was talking about working on this visualization of a labyrinth of stars and coming up with dramatic cotton balls, right? As both you and my children describe them, and have revisioned that. But I was able to put those cotton balls in, and they don't look like cotton balls now.
I told you that.
You told me that.
Yeah.
That's why I mentioned it.
Yeah, the way you took the notes and your own notes, because you also had that same sort of gut feeling about it. Where you placed those cotton balls,
those fiery cotton balls,
was brilliant. And I'm not just saying that. Like when it popped in there, I was in the sequence. I was like, oh, see, now that's a really smart way to show that image.
Right, because it has it fits the context.
Yeah.
It's supported by the
and
context.
I loved the running through the maze. That to me, that was what my gut was telling me, and that's there.
Right.
And
I had a version similar to that before,
you did.
But this is you would agree this is a better version.
I think this is a cleaner approach to it, and also it added the jerky drama, the sort of the tension-filled panic that I think the very first version probably didn't have. So that's really why I like this one.
Yeah. Well, thanks for that.
Yeah.
So in a nutshell, practice does help, even though it feels like drudgery sometimes. You will become more capable, and you will benefit from that. You will not only be able to do better what it is that you are currently aiming for, but other things will become available to you that you may not have thought about before. Yeah, so that's rewarding in a couple of ways.
Very cool.
And then other things will be possible that you may not have even considered.
Yeah.
So I'm delighted to hear about your other moments to share and stories to share about creativity. And just for everybody who's listening, we talked about inspiration before, and that is the thing that excites you to make something. But there's a big difference between having an idea and actually following through. The work of following through is what we mean in this conversation about creativity. Actually, putting in that sweat equity, all the actual work that it takes to get it done.
Yes.
Okay, so please, yes. What do you have to offer?
So, following your lead, as I requested in the beginning of our chat, I I'm thinking about, and this might help some of my music audio recording people out there who are interested in creating the sounds that they're hearing in their head, or looking for that magical tonality that they don't necessarily know where it's going to come from, but they know it when they hear it. One of the things that I have done with most of my recording processes and trying to find the right paintbrush and color for my music is I will do a setup. Let's say I'm tracking guitars, and I know this is a really cool guitar part. It might be an incredible rhythm part. It's not a lead part, but it's a rhythm part. And I know I want it to have some grit, and I know I want it to have some bite, and I know I want it to have some clarity, because I don't want it to be too thick. But I'm not quite sure which one of my guitars I should use, which one of my amplifiers I should use. Now, a lot of people might not have multiple guitars, and a lot of people might not have multiple actual old school analog amps. They might just have digital stuff, and that's all good too. This still applies to that. The thing that I like to do is I have a mission of coming up with this sound. But the song's already written. Now it's time to put those colors in place. And what I like to do is I like to set up all of my options so that I can toggle between them, so that I can try out the different sounds while I'm working. The part never changes. Maybe I'm playing those same 3 chords over and over again, but I might change which guitar I'm using first. And I might say, okay, this is a good guitar to work with. I don't want to use my acoustic. I think I'm going to use this Rickenbacker guitar, or I'm going to use electric, or I'm going to use this Telecaster. Whatever it is, I think I know where to start with the guitar. But then I have all of these options to switch between. And when I say switch, I really do mean that. It means that I sometimes have a little pedal that I can click on different buttons, and it sends the signals to different amps. It sends the signals through different effects so that I can A-B this stuff, or A, B, C, and D this stuff. Because sometimes in the creative process, what you imagine as the thing you're going after is not played on that particular guitar through that particular amp. I know a lot of my guitar buddies out there will have different opinions on the best guitar to use for this, or the best amp, or my favorite sound. But like, when you think heavy rock and roll power chords, someone might say, oh man, I'm going to play a Les Paul through a Marshall. That's going to be it. But then you do that, and it sounds like mud. And you're like, well, maybe it's not the right amp. Maybe it's my Les Paul through a Fender. Oh, that sounds cool. Or maybe it's not even that. Maybe I use my Tele through the Marshall. So all of those different options are all correct, but they might not be the sound you're looking for. So as a creative person, I like to be able to see the full palette. And I'm using my art reference for those people because we also talk about it that way besides cooking the food.
There's the food, and then there's the paint.
Yes, I want to be able to have all those different variations in front of me and be able to switch between them so that I could try to find that right sonic thing. And when I do find that right sonic thing, it's like, oh man, I had no idea it was going to be the combination of these things. So many times I've been surprised by the magic of those combinations. It's like a combination lock, right? How many different numbers can pop up and you're like, oh my goodness, it's infinite, right? Well, it's the same thing. Like if I have 20 guitars and 5 amps and 30, effects pedals, the options are endless. So I like to see like, well, I guess my first instinct would have gone this way, but maybe that's completely wrong. And of course you try things that are completely wrong, right? You'll do something and go, that sounds terrible. Like, let's never use that combination ever again. But the fun part is to be open to being surprised, because
Mm,
especially
yeah.
if you're working in a situation where you're working in your home studio, or with friends, or a friend's studio where it's not about the monetary exchange. You're hanging out, you're being creative together, and you're not watching the clock because you're paying for studio time. You're creating on your own, and when you have that kind of flexibility, you can experiment without worrying about, oh, well, we're going to run out of time if we don't get this vocal done, so let's not spend so much time looking for that guitar sound, and let's make sure we get this song recorded from the singer. But there's so much fun in experimenting. I remember a long time ago on a record we were doing. Yes, I do call them records. A record we were doing in New York, probably in I want to say it was probably 1990.
1870.
Yeah, exactly, on a gramophone. One of the things we were looking for was this moody kind of undertone, this powerful dark tone from what would normally be just like a synthesizer thing, or maybe played on bass. And at the time, Kevin Merritt, good friend of ours, who's also a voice actor, director, very talented musician, playing keyboards with me, decided to use the pedals of a B3 organ that you would normally play with your feet. He got down on the ground and played them with his hands as that low part. And it was just a weird idea, but it was so cool sounding on the record, on the song. I would never have thought of that. I also probably wouldn't have that in my own home studio. We were recording at a professional studio at that time, but we were also still experimenting with cool stuff. But I loved that. I loved that was not expected, but yet was the right sound. So for those that are trying to do their own home recording, and maybe they don't have access to as much stuff as maybe what I'm talking about, if you've got one guitar that you're using and you can use plugins for different amps and different effects, try things that are unexpected. Change the EQ. Sometimes you put your voice through what sounds like a telephone filter. Change the EQ on the guitar, or change the verb you're using, or the delay you're using. Experiment with stuff, and you might come up with something that becomes almost a signature sound of that song, right? Where you weren't even expecting that would be like, oh, I didn't realize this part was going to be so important in the tune. So I find that to be very, very exhilarating and creatively fun. It might seem like a lot of work to get one thing done, but honestly, even if the audience doesn't recognize that specific thing, I know it's there as the producer, and I hope that if I took it away, you would miss it.
Right. And I'm so glad you used the word filter, because I think a lot of people who do visual art can understand essentially what you're getting at.
Yes.
And this also deeply applies to Photoshop and photographers. There is so much that can be enhanced, and filmmakers as well, when you adjust the exposure, the contrast, the color balancing, all of these things. You can't do that until you have something to do it to. So you have to write the song, you have to create the sound,
yes,
or the image. But there is so much more available to you after that, as you just said, when you find the right combination of those elements, if you took that away, it just wouldn't be the same thing.
Yeah, and as much as
they become essential.
Right, and as much as it was, a chore, and I say that with love, a chore to write that song or to come up with that image that you're creating. This is not that it's an easier part of the process, but it's a different exhaustion. It's like after you're done with it, you're like, well, that was a lot of work, but it was a lot of work to just sort of tweak the thing that I had to take so much time to create, right? Like affecting that visual or affecting that song or that part of that song. Really in post is what we're talking about, can make or break it as well.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I mean, so many albums live or die by the mix.
Yeah, the mix and just those elements. There's so many songs where, and I love to go back and listen to some of these odder, experimental tunes. Not so much because it's a great song, or not so much because I love everything that's going on, but I'm listening to really weird things in those tracks. Anytime I've produced for another artist, I will ask them. I'll say, okay, so I'm never going to tell you what I think your song should sound like. What I want to do is obviously bring out the best qualities of what I'm hearing as the producer, and so that the artist is happy. But also, I will ask them, like, who do you listen to? Like, what was an inspiration in this moment, so that we can create similar sounds. Oh, you like the Rolling Stones early stuff? This is what you're after, or the Beatles stuff like that? Okay, well then some of these stereo mixes, the drums are on one side; they're not even in stereo. Like go listen to Satisfaction and listen to the acoustic guitar. The acoustic guitar, pan it one way or the other, and you'll hear that acoustic guitar playing. You're like, I didn't even know that was in the track. Yeah, it is. So, like I like to ask the questions of what people are trying to emulate in terms of the vibe. And that is such a fun creative experience too. Because then you start to listen to other people's music for those things that I think they think maybe get missed by the audience. You would miss it, but you don't necessarily know why you loved the vibe of that track. Well, it could be the panning. It could be the main mix. It could be just the general guitar tone of it. It could be the reverb that's on the track. So those elements are so much fun in the creative environment.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I was also remembering a time, my wife's last album and her best album. That's her own opinion, and I would agree. The first mix that was done on that just didn't work. And I didn't have the language to describe why, but she was clearly unhappy with it. But the final version, the final mix was so good.
Now, was it done by the same person with notes, or was it taken to someone else?
Taken to a different mixer. Not that the first mixer was bad.
No.
But they just weren't hearing what she was hearing.
Yeah.
And clearly what this other mixer was able to understand.
It's a tricky thing. I do not mix my own music. I send a rough mix to Larry Alexander, the guy that mixes everything for me. And I'll send him a rough mix as here's what the song sounds like, not as a guide track. And then I send him all of the individual tracks for him to do his own thing with no processing at all, right? There's nothing. There's no reverb. There's no delays. There's nothing on there so that he can create the way he wants to create. None of the panning is done. And every once in a while, there'll be something where he'll bring something out of a mix that I forgot was even there. Like he'll raise the level of something and I'll go, oh yeah.
There are snaps there.
I'm like, that's a really cool part. I forgot that was even there because I remembered it was there and I always hear it. So it's not like I think it's too low in the mix. Or like this last track that he just mixed for me. There was a very important part to me that was a very subtle part, but it got lost. And immediately when I listened to the first pass, I said, hey, there's this one little keyboard part that plays on the back end in the chorus of this, and I really think that's part of the hook. And then when he made that adjustment, I was like, yeah, that's exactly it. So it wasn't like his first mix was wrong, but it's really very interesting to hand off something like that to someone else. Especially when there's like 40 tracks, you got 40 tracks in a song and you're like, what do you think is the thing that needs to be the loudest? Of course, besides my vocal.
We should have a whole other conversation about editing.
Yes.
Yeah. But yeah, it is so crucial. And I don't think I can go too many episodes without invoking the name of Peter Gabriel.
Yes.
But I bring it up in this context because he is known for having, whether you like the songs or not, it's extremely well mixed.
Yes.
His stuff,
and great sounds. I mean, they are.
The range of sounds he brings to his material.
They are mixed well,
Very
but the
creative.
sounds are so amazing. So anyway, So that's my creative take.
Yeah, Well, thank you for that. That was, I think, really helpful for a lot of people to understand. And, that's a part of the process that a lot of people might not even think is going to be a process once they get their song out. It's like, so I made my song. There it is. It's like, no.
Yep.
There's still a lot more you could do with that. So, yeah, great. Well, I think we've had a creative conversation about creativity.
Yeah, wow.
And I'm glad we created the time and space for this conversation. Another thing I was going to add into everybody's thinking caps is making that, time and space. And so I love to go on long walks. By long, I mean like a couple hours. And it is so good for my headspace. As well as just being a good thing to do,
Yes.
For your cardiovascular health.
Yes.
But I so often, even though I'm not thinking about solving one thing or another thing, and this can apply to a creative endeavor or just an issue I'm having with myself or, other life stuff. But so often when I come back from a walk, I not only feel like I'm more centered so that I can deal with whatever, but very often I do have a new idea or a new approach or something. So giving yourself those things that help you just be in a better mindset is also crucial, I think, to any kind of thing that you're doing that's creative. And remember, living your life is a creative endeavor.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just for artists. Everyone participates in creativity because we all make moments from our life.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Good stuff.
All right, man. Good stuff. Well, thanks, Eric. A pleasure as always.
Thank you, Dan.
To speak with you. Yeah, for sure. And it wouldn't mean a thing without everybody who's listening and following the Heart of the Cards every week. Thank you so much. We know we got a bunch of new people. We got over 2,000 subscribers now. That's very fun for us. Yes. And we appreciate people who show up regularly. We appreciate the people who have given it a shot. And maybe sometimes we lose a subscriber here or there. That's not often, thankfully. But whenever you're in the mood for a conversation about creativity, inspiration, and dealing with what you're dealt, we'll look forward to meeting you here next time.
Thanks for listening to The Heart of the Cards with Dan Green and Eric Stuart. We hope this conversation in some way spoke to you. Whatever your journey, we look forward to crossing paths again in the next episode. This is Veronica Taylor, and on behalf of Andromeda Productions, we wish you well.
Andromeda, always a sound choice.